Hey, chat, can you hear everything? If you can hear everything, go ahead, type something in the chat on Zoom, please.
Otherwise, you should be good. Just by taking photos and send it to my manager.
All right, you guys. So first of all, you guys, thank you so much for coming and supporting our multifamily masters, Glendale and Pasadena, Texas. My name is Jason Malabute. I am the more handsome half of the multifamily method. Dexter, who is my co-organizer, he's actually in Dallas right now. He's at the Michael Berg Deal Maker Live conference. So we're very happy for people who are actually taking the steps to really progress in this business. So before we get to our guest speaker, a few announcements. As mentioned, we're always looking for sponsors to help us with foods, drinks, and also parking. That's a great way for you guys to advertise yourselves and your business to our audience. Now, for what you guys have all been waiting for, the one and only Bronson Hill.
Awesome, guys. How we doing? It's like the home court. We do a meetup here. Some of you guys come to our meetup as well. We do a meetup here the first Wednesday of the month, and so it's awesome to be here. And thanks to Max and for Jason for having me. This is really exciting. So, how many of you guys see this slide and you're like, I want that to be me. I want to quit my job, maybe even in less than 3 years. Yeah, everybody's like, I'm raising 2 hands. Like, I'm ready for that. So I'm going to go over a few things and share a little bit of my story and how I was able to leave my job through multifamily, through raising money for real estate. I didn't know how quite to start, but I'm just going to kind of go through some of this, and then we'll do some questions and some other stuff later. But hopefully you enjoy this, and hopefully you get a lot of value out of it. It was nice talking to some of you before, doing all different things in real estate, and that's the amazing thing about real estate. You come to those meetups, you meet somebody, and somebody shared that you were, I don't remember, what's your name again, brother? Michael. Michael, you're talking about this zero down thing with below interest rate stuff on a fourplex, and just an awesome program. And I was like, I didn't know that was there. So we were texting that around just a little bit ago. So when we share knowledge, that's how we all get better. So, okay, so I'm going to jump in here in the slide. Here we go. Clicker works. Okay, so this was my last day of work. That's me below the mask there. I was a medical device sales guy for 10 years, which basically meant I went into surgery and I helped heart surgeons with some of their equipment. It was very interesting. I enjoyed it. I was making over $200K a year, but I didn't, some of you are like, oh my gosh, why would, and even my family was like, why would you ever want to leave a great job like that, right? But it's because I wanted to have financial freedom. When I say financial freedom, what comes to mind for you? What comes to your mind?
Freedom of time.
Freedom of time. That's it. Because even though people have money, they don't have time. And I worked with a couple of physicians. They were working 60, 80 hours a week. They were making literally millions each a year, but they weren't free. And so to me, freedom, financial freedom is freedom of time. And so the idea of you not working for money, but your money working for you, or even better, getting other people's money working for you, right? Does that sound pretty good to some people? Yeah, that sounds even better. So that was my last day of work, and the emotions I was feeling were just I was so excited to leave that finally when it came, I had enough passive income or investment income to cover my living expenses, which is the first form of financial freedom. Then you have covering your former income or what income you're making, and then you have kind of income beyond your wildest dreams. There's different forms of financial freedom. The most basic one is covering your rat race number, right? If you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, have you read that book? Also the Cash Flow 101 game talks about how do you get out of the rat race? That's how you get out of the rat race. You have to cover your living expenses. And for me, it was only, it wasn't a lot. So I'll get into this here in a minute, and I don't want to get too far off of it. But this is, and Jason, let me know if I go too long or you want to try to feel free. So Tony Robbins says this, he says, it's in your moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. And so there came a point where I said, you know what, I want to leave my job. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to make a commitment to do that and do whatever it takes to do it. When I made that decision, like that set me on a road to become financially free. And this was the method that I used. But again, it's like when you make that decision, your subconscious will help you figure it out. You will figure it out on the way if you truly commit to it, if you do whatever it takes. And I've watched that again and again with other people. We're going to get into kind of how I did it and how you might be able to do it too. So this is me. And this is basically some of my background. We have about 200 million in multifamily real estate. We have over 2,000 units. I've personally raised about 35 million from investors. I think it's about 36 million now because we raised a little bit more. Over 15 years experience. We do some educational stuff on a podcast, YouTube. I'll kind of share some more stuff at the end. We actually co-lead a meetup here, actually this room, first Wednesday of the month. And it's now called ITI. So I got to update this. It's called Investors to Investor, which is our new name for that meeting. So yeah, exactly. So this is what I mentioned, the time for money trade. A lot of us do the time for money trade, which does not lead to financial freedom. I shared a little bit of my story. I was paying a lot of taxes as well. So over 2K a year, I was working 20, 30 hours a week. Family's like, you're crazy. Why would you want to leave? But this is what it meant to me. It meant freedom of time, being able to travel. This is Patagonia in December. I went for about 10 days, traveled, 4 or 5 day trip there, traveling up on the upper right. That's Spartan races. So I pay to suffer and go on the barbed wire and just, not eat pastries and do things that are here. More right. This is human trafficking. That's a big cause of mine, really wanting to help try to end modern day human slavery in the world. People know there's 20 to 40 million human slaves today, more than we've ever had in the history of the world. So that's a passion of mine of just ending that. So financial freedom to me allows me to pursue these things that I value. So here's a blueprint. I'm going to give you guys a blueprint. Does that sound good if I give you kind of my blueprint on how to do it, how you might be able to do it as well? Sure. Okay, awesome. Because somebody's a little excited. Okay, Phoebe's excited. So this is the plan, right? This is the rat race that people tell you. The little sign up there says, where you headed? You're headed nowhere. There's a laser, up on the top. There's a little, this is nowhere. Go to college, find a job, pay off debt. We're 45 years at the end. And that's what most people do. And Dr. Evil would say, we made a good plan, right? This is our good plan. And then you realize, you had a good plan one time. And I was like, this is not a good plan. Like whatever it was, I'm like, no, I thought I was going to do this, but this just is not going to work. And that's kind of what I had, the idea that this is really not a good plan. So I mentioned the formula. There's kind of, the first one is finding out what your rat race number is for me. So for me, it was not that much. It was 50, 60K a year. I live pretty simply. You may have more. You may need 120K a year, whatever that number is. Figure out what that number is for you. You can live. It's enough for you to be able to cover your living expenses, your insurance, your house payment, your rent, whatever, all that stuff that you need, your food, and be able to travel a little bit, whatever. Just figure out what that number is. And then you grow your cash flow until your cash flow exceeds that number. It's really that simple, right? It sounds like super like, we make it really complex, but it's really just that. It's just an equation. It's just how can I grow? How can I reduce expenses? And how can I make more passively or with investment income? And that's how people become financially free. That's really it. That's really the formula, at least to get started with it. Okay, so there's 2 ways to do it. If you have money, you can invest passively. You can start with the goal of, really a lot of people that I've had over 1,500 one-on-one phone calls with high net worth investors. And a lot of times people to get started, it's like it feels uncomfortable because they've never done it. They never invested passively with someone else. I love passive deals because you can get the same or better returns often than doing it yourself. And plus a lot of times we undervalue our time. So if you have a net worth of over 1 or 2 million, it makes sense to only be passive, right? That may make sense. Or if you have a really demanding job, where you're doing something, you're making a lot of money, what's your money doing for you? This is actually a skill that you develop. It's like a muscle you didn't know you have. Once you get stronger there, you're like, oh, I can do that, whatever. And then people get the confidence that this actually could replace my income. And I've watched it happen over and over again. So you invest more without, increasing your expenses. I'm going to go kind of quick on these. We can always circle back. We may have some time for questions, I think, at the end. But if you have more time than you have money, how many of you have more time than you have money? Somebody wants to raise their hand. I had more time than I had money, even though I was making like a good salary. I didn't have a lot of savings. And if you don't have either, you want to go to the got time, because if you don't have money, you've got to put in the time, right? It takes time to do it. So you've heard that saying, it takes money to make money. Anybody ever heard that one before? His parents say that it takes money to make money. And it's true, but it just doesn't have to be your money, right? Robert Kiyosaki, I heard him speak a couple times, and he said, it's selfish if you only use your own money. You're not giving somebody else to get a chance to get on a great deal, right? It's another way to look at it, right? People have a money problem, and you may have a way you can help them if you have time to be able to do it. This is the first house I bought, ended up buying a couple more. These were low-cost houses in Cleveland. The first one was in Montana. I realized, there's a lot of work and I wasn't really getting any sort of cash flow. And I was like, man, I want to get a bunch of these and maybe I'll be wealthy over time, but I just wasn't getting where I wanted to go. There's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And this was my mentor, a cousin of mine I hadn't seen in years. He's been doing multifamily for years. And, basically, it's about the time I made the decision because I said, okay, he said, you can actually raise the money to do this. And I was like, oh, well, you can do that. I mean, tell me what about, have you heard of syndication? You guys have heard of real estate syndication? I remember the first time I heard the word syndication, I thought it was like a crime thing or something. What is this? A couple of talking about syndication. I was like, it's a mob couple or what's the Bonnie and Clyde or something? But making that decision to be able to quit. And so he became a mentor to me, kind of taught me, just read this book, go to this thing. Now we run this meeting. This isn't our old location, but we'll basically at a meeting like this, a meeting just like this, actually, I met my first investor who came up and said, hey, I'd invest in one of your deals. And this is a time I didn't have any, I was new to this. I was literally just in front of the room and I was interviewing, kind of like hosting a meetup. And yet, because I was a leader, there's a difference between being a leader and being an expert, right? An expert knows the content really. A leader's just leading the conversation. They're setting up, they're organizing, they're doing it. So, anyway, this guy said, I invest in one of your deals. He ended up investing $100K in one of my deals. I kind of tell that story a little bit later, but it just came from getting coffee and I connected him with somebody else I met at that first meeting. Again, this is the first meetup that we had, and we had 60 people there and I partnered, and there was kind of a story around how that came together. But I was able to get from 0 to 1. And we were just talking about the hardest thing is getting from 0 and getting from, okay, I'm a passive person. I'm doing the other things to where I'm actually a general partner on the deal. I've actually got some experience. That's the hardest part. And once you get that, then it gets easier because now you're an industry insider, right? So this was kind of, this is an opportunity for you too. If you start or help a meetup or help Jason and say, hey, I want to volunteer, can I help out in these different areas, help get sponsors? And we do the same thing in our meetup. Somebody mentioned Michael Blanc. I think Dexter's been seeing Michael Blanc today at this event. I had raised $100K for a deal. Then about 6 months later, I paid some money to go on an expensive, it was a cruise. It was like an investor cruise. And Michael Blanc is a well-known multifamily syndicator, has thousands of units. And he was teaching people how to raise money for real estate. And I approached him and I said, hey, how's it going? Raising money. And I said, can I help you out with this or whatever? And so we kind of found an agreement to do that. And I had basically over the next 18 months, I had 1,000 one-on-one phone calls with investors. That's a lot of phone calls, right? That's a long time on Zoom while working my full-time job. So was I hustling? I was hustling a little bit, right? But I knew it would be a hustle for a short term so that I could build this thing. And when I'm ready to leave, I could leave, right? And I could develop the goal of time freedom. So I made the decision and I kept time freedom and I'm going to keep going towards this. So for me, that's what opened a lot of doors for me. So again, we raised $15 million together over the next 18 months. We got about 60 million in real estate together. My net worth went up like 20 times. Like it was like huge, right? It opened up a lot of doors for me, right? So you never know who you're going to meet or what's going to happen. So now we raised about 35 million. We do some of these content things. The reason I'm showing you this is not just to tell you about us, is that these are things that you can do. There's things anybody can do. And what it can seem overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, to create all this stuff or this content or have a podcast or whatever. All this stuff just starts with one thing at a time. It starts with one decision, starts with one, interview with someone on Zoom and how can I post this on YouTube, whatever. And then you just kind of start going. And there's this saying that anything worth doing is worth doing poorly at first, right? Because what happens when you do something and you get it done and it's not good? What's going to happen the next time? You're going to get a little better. Every time we record, I remember I had my first YouTube video series I did, and I sent it to one of my mentors from church, and he's a business guy. He's got a couple hundred employees, and he's like, "Oh, Bronson, yeah, I just don't think this is your best work." He's just so down about it. I was like, "Oh, it's okay, man. I can take it. I'll cry later." But what I did is every single time I've gotten better. I try to get better every time. And it's not perfect, but now we've got a small, thriving YouTube channel. We raised millions of dollars just from doing this stuff, right? So this kind of stuff helps. So we've got a podcast, we've got YouTube, we've got these events that we do, and I'll get into that in a second, kind of how we do that. But the formula we talked about, replacing your income. So the second one, a lot of people think I've got to replace, if I'm making 100 or 200 or whatever, how much it is, I've got to replace that. But that's not really necessarily it. It is focusing on the rat race number, doing that first. And then the second step, if you want to try to replace your income, you can certainly do that as well. So that slide's a little different, but these are my best tips for growing a syndication business. We got the devious raccoon there. So these are kind of some of my top secrets. You guys want to see these? Does it sound good if I show some secrets? Okay, I know Steve's excited. Okay, a couple hands go up. I gotta make sure you're paying attention. So this is kind of a couple of secrets that I've learned. My best tips is this saying, make yourself valuable to valuable people. This actually happened to me when I talked about Michael Blanc. When I was on this cruise, I'm at a round table and somebody says, you know, it's like that quote, make yourself valuable to valuable people. And I was like, I never heard that. And that comes from a guy named Jim Rohn, R-O-H-N, who's a motivational speaker, awesome guy, amazing stuff. But the idea is you find someone who's doing something and creating a lot of value in the marketplace. And you come to them not saying, hey, can you mentor me? Or hey, can you give me this? Or hey, can you whatever? You're basically coming and saying, hey, is there a way that I can help you? Is there any problem? And it's not, I have people sometimes come like, hey, what can I do for you? Whatever. And they just come very generally. But if it's like, here's this specific part in your business, how's it going here? I think I might have the skill set, or I know somebody that can help you, right? And that's a very different type of way to do it. So what you're doing is you're making yourself valuable to valuable people. So in single family, how many of you done single family stuff before? Single family, you can do it by yourself. It's just you, maybe your agent, maybe a property manager, or maybe you have a spouse, something, but multifamily is a team sport. Big syndication is a team sport. So it's not about, you don't have to do everything. You just do one part of it. So I didn't realize like, oh, I have all this sales experience and maybe talking with investors would be a good idea. I thought I'd maybe find deals. I tried different things, but this helped to open up some things. So another way you can do it is helping investors. We have 2 medical professionals that sold a practice in California. They were dentists that live in San Diego area. They sold their practice for $5 million and they had a $2.4 million tax bill. We say, ouch, right?
Oh.
Ouch. But through creative structuring, through the real estate professional designation, through education, through different things, they got the tax bill down to $125K. Is that awesome? That's almost 2.3 some million, or 2.275 million saved that they would have paid in taxes. They didn't pay. That's powerful. Is that valuable? Right? So I wasn't like the solution for that. Was part of that solution, right? So I'm just texting with that guy earlier today. I'm going to see him next week on a trip I'm going on in Belize for some investor stuff, right? So like that's how you make yourself valuable to valuable people. You provide that value to people, and then they see, oh, this is somebody who's actually helping in a situation with a real need. So that's one example. You may, I don't know anybody that's selling a business, whatever, but you'll be surprised. The more you put stuff out there, the more you get interact with different people. You'll be able to meet up somebody has an issue, and somebody will share something like, oh, that was awesome. That's how this happened. So. That's kind of how stuff happens. Have you seen Office Space? It's one of my favorite movies. I love it. And there's this scene with the Bobs where they're the consultants that come in and they're trying to figure out what the guy does. And they say, well, what would you say you do around here? And the guy's all like flustered. Oh, I feel like as a syndicator, sometimes like, well, what would you say you do? Like, what do you like? Do you do podcasts all day long and you go to conferences and you like, what do you do? And so what are the activities that actually, when you're doing real estate syndication, when you're raising money, like what does it actually look like? What does that actually mean? Well, let's see if my clicker will work here. So this is my friend Russell Gray. We know Russell Gray, real estate guys, good guy. So he would say this as a syndicator, which is what you are if you're raising money. I'm specifically talking about raising money and kind of how to scale a business that way. There are other ways on operations as well, but if you're a syndicator, building your business and building your brand, building the business is building the structures, the emails go out, maybe it's the asset management, it's the different things having to do with the structure of the business itself. How does it operate? How's it growing? That kind of thing. And then building the brand. That's the part I think that's a lot of people have trouble with actually building the brand. And there are certain things you can do. Now, if you show up to a meetup, I'm not going to point at anybody here, but you show up to a meetup and like, you show up and you're dressed well and you have a good attitude and you smile, that says something about your brand, right? You're actually saying something, even though you may not have a company, even though you may not be saying it. But if you sit in the back and you're half asleep and you're disheveled, you're drooling, whatever, that's just something about you too, right? So like, again, what we say, it's not just, hey, I have a brand or it looks like Coca-Cola. It's what am I saying? What's my personal brand? What do you get known for? Because if you show up to a place and you have a brand that's like, hey, this person's here to help. They're always introducing people. They're finding solutions to problems. They're upbeat. They love what they do. Whatever. There's that passion there, and you see it. Then you get known to be that kind of person, and that's what you want. You want to get known to that kind of person. So I just want to share a little bit of my something I tried and failed in. They say one of the differences between an employee and an entrepreneur is that if you're an employee and you make too many mistakes, what happens?
Get fired.
Get fired, yes. But as an entrepreneur, you have to make a lot of mistakes. You have to be willing to make a lot of mistakes. You got to be willing to fail and then quickly learn. can't make mistakes for too long because then you'll just run out of money or you'll fail. You'll be like frustrated. But the idea, it's a very different mindset, right? And this is why they say why A students work for C students, right? I was an A student growing up. I had to get over that perfectionist thing that things have to be perfect. So you think of why do CPAs and lawyers, why do they work for people that run businesses? Well, it's because maybe the C students were more willing to take risks or were willing to actually try and kind of make things work because they had to kind of make it work that way, right? So it's just an interesting paradigm. So this was the 2021 Multifamily Outlook event. This is an event that I did. It was a webinar. It was me and 40 slides, and I was really excited about it. It was got this big crowd, and like 14 people showed up, including my mom and some of her friends. It was very disappointing, right? I was like, oh, excited about it. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be amazing. And it totally flopped. I was like, just crashed. So I said, okay, man, this just isn't working. What can I do? And I said, well, maybe I should invite people that are a bigger brand, right? With Russell Gray, build your brand. Well, part of branding is attracting people that are, being around people that have a bigger reach than you do. Because what happens if you're associated with people that have a bigger brand, right? You get to, oh, that's one of the peers. You're one of the friends. You're one of the people that's kind of in that circle, which is awesome. So this was 2021. This is 12 months later. Just tell me if you think there's any difference between these two slides, okay? So this is like a year later. Do you think that's a little different? Yeah, yes, yeah, maybe yes. This event, and Michael's a friend. I've gotten to know Ken, is amazing. I have a book coming out shortly. He just did the forward for the book, which is amazing. Rod Khalif, you guys. This is a Rod Khalif associated group, right? In a way, or no?
We have a mixing group of people here.
Okay, I know Rod with some of the multifamily masters, he was involved, but anyway, this one, I think Ken sent it out to like his list, and like 900 people signed up or something. So we had all this, and then so I get people that as I'm just moderating, again, even in this thing, these guys all have bigger brands than me, right? They're all way bigger, but because I'm the person who's coordinating this, then people are like, well, who's this guy? What's he doing? Whatever. And I'm also like, as I'm on a panel, I'm also like answering the questions as well. So again, I'm doing an expert panel, but I'm also like asking myself I'm answering the question as well. It's not just like so there's a way you present yourself that you're in there. And I get a lot of the people that are on their list that they're reaching out, hey, I know Ken, but I don't really know you. I didn't get on your list. I need to find out about your deals, right? So this is a way you can kind of brand yourself. It doesn't have to be through a webinar, it could be through a podcast, it could be through a meetup, it could be just something to be thinking about who you're associating with, even getting a picture at an event, right? That's a big deal, right? So these are some things that we did. I'll just kind of go real quick. Some of these guys, I don't know if this thing will work, but this guy up here on the left, this Adam Taggart, he's got like 300,000 or 400,000 YouTube subscribers. These guys both have about 500,000 YouTube subscribers. This guy's a billionaire. That helps being around a billionaire. That helps if you're doing stuff with money. Just stuff like this. It's like this guy's raised, I think, $600 or $700 million. He lives in Santa Barbara area. But like who you're associated with, it matters, right? What if I had a picture of me and like Bernie Madoff? Right? Would that be a good association? No, that's a bad association, right? You have that picture, you don't want to show it. But like if you associate with certain people, it will build your brand and people will associate you with them. So there's value to that. So I just want to kind of go over that. Be willing to make mistakes and learn. I talked about this book, Before You Quit Your Job. My cousin Wes, I showed a picture out. I was literally turning my notice and he's like, hey, you should read this book before you quit your job. And I was like, I'm quitting my job. And he's like, no, you should read this. I read it and it was actually very good. But he describes the thing about employee versus entrepreneur. He says being an entrepreneur is like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute and trying to assemble one before you hit the ground. How many want to sign up for that? Sounds great. Steve's like, yeah, I'm already in that. So, right? Yeah, I'm on. But that's what it's a very different mindset. So that's a great book to read. I recommend that one. Things I wish I'd known sooner. It's never about me and my deal. So these are things that like I wish I had known sooner. So these are some other secrets of just if I were doing this again, things I would do now. It's never about me or my deal. And if you want to take notes, take pictures, feel free. I don't care. I'm happy to share this slide. I'll share with you. But it's never about me and my deal because if you go to a used car lot and you meet Fast Eddie and he's really excited to see you, and he's like he wants to like you look great in that nice 1970 Buick and you're like, I don't want to be like, that's more about you, man, than it's about me, right? And that's the thing, you don't want to lead with your need. And I've seen it so many times, hey man, I got a deal. You want to get into my deal? You want to get it's like, it's a vibe, right? So somebody asked me recently, like, well, how many investors do you call when you like have a deal, whatever? And I was like, and do you ask them for, and I said, I don't call any investors. So I don't get on the phone and like call like, hey, you ready for a deal? Whatever. Some people have told me, hey, when you have this deal come up, let me know. So I'll email them, but just notify people, hey, you've said you're interested in deals. We've got a deal. If you're interested, reach out. And then people reach out and we raise millions of dollars. Like, it's kind of amazing how it works, but we set it up in a way that it's all about trying to help people get to their financial goals. And even if what I have can't help them, maybe, Marcus has something that can help them. Maybe Vessi has something. If I can refer them to someone else, that's two things. It's a trusting thing that I did for the person I'm talking to because it's what's best for them. And also, these guys will appreciate the referral as well, right? So it's really about trying to help people get where they want to go. So be a consultant, listen more than you talk, and solve problems. Like I said, wish I'd really done that sooner. Be really under promise and over deliver. A lot of people come in with really high, the numbers are going to be great. It's going to be double your money in 3 years. We're going to refinance. You're going to have whatever, just modest expectations. And just try to under promise and over deliver, which is hard these days. It's hard. Getting to do multifamily deals is harder because of interest rates, because of investor sentiment. It's getting more challenging. So if you can just be very honest and just, again, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And a lot of people that you talk with, initially I had 62 one-on-one phone calls or in-person conversations with friends and family. You know how many invested? 0. Goose egg. 0 for 62. And the guy who invested was a guy I met for the first time at a meetup like this, right? But then some of those people have invested. And so, it's a long game. So just look at it like a long game. Don't look at it like it's, they invest, they don't invest. If you are, most people try this and then they give up, but if you're willing to stick with it, you'll see it'll grow. Things I wish I had done sooner. Start building a brand online presence, social media. You can hire help. I am not a big techie guy in general. How many feel like you're not a techie person? Like, yeah, most of us. But what I realize is the stuff through CRMs, which are like contact management stuff and doing automations. And once you learn it, you can teach it, and it's really powerful. And this is how people make millions of dollars online: is they find a way to go from one-to-one to go to one-to-many. Right. So if I do a podcast and it gets 100 views, or if I do or on YouTube it gets 100 views. One of those people can invest 100K, and it's happened in the last 6 months. It's probably happened 3 or 4 times. I just found you on YouTube and you sound like a good guy. I'm going to invest 100K. Like, it's amazing, right? Like, okay, I'm not getting millions of views, but I don't need millions of views. I just need views from the right people, and then I'm presenting in the correct way. So this is really valuable to do. Things I wish I'd done sooner. There is a training here, Neil Bawa. If you guys have heard of Neil Bawa, he's a guy in the multifamily space. He has a virtual assistance training. It's a free webinar. So if you search just that Neil Bawa virtual assistance webinar, you'll find that. And he teaches you how to hire VAs. It's about a 45-minute. He's not selling anything on there. I mean, he sells his stuff other places in his investments, but virtual assistants are awesome. So while I was still working my full-time job, I hired a virtual assistant because I realized, like, I want to start sending out weekly emails. And I want to create a process. So here's one of my processes. I know Steve's a process. Keep pointing at Steve because he's like our, ITI, he's like the brains, and him and Anat just have got a lot of this. But you create a process, then you can hand it off to someone else. Right. So what for me this is, I saw Michael Blunt do this, is that I would record 4 10-minute videos in one setting. So I typically outline them, just 3 bullet points and whatever, to be talking about a topic. I record them. And it used to take me like 4 or 5 hours, take me most of the day. Now it takes me like an hour and a half, but I can record them once a month. Then that goes over to the editor, which gets edited. Those get put on YouTube. And then they also get transcribed. There's some websites that transcribe video for you at cheap or free. Then it goes to a US-based writer, and she turns it into a blog. And then it gets turned into the weekly email, and it goes on the blog. So I have a VA that kind of helps with these processes, and it's repeatable. So I literally just create 4 videos a month. It takes me an hour and a half of recording. It takes me a little time to kind of organize it, but once a month, and then just this stuff goes out there. So it goes YouTube, it goes, we can even do it as a podcast. We can do it different ways. And then, so there's stuff to be able to repurpose and use in different ways. So that's a process, right? And a lot of this stuff is just process. They say, oh, you're doing all this, you're doing all that. But once you create one process, then I was like, okay, well, let's do the webinar, or let's do a podcast, or so we do these other things, and then we can hand them off to other people that can help along the way. So again, you don't have to do everything. It's not that difficult. It's not that expensive. You can get a full-time virtual assistant for about $1,200 a month. That's actually decent. I just hired another one, and she does a lot of stuff for me. It's amazing. So, so this right here, this is one of my first VA I hired 2.5 years ago, and she's awesome. She's not perfect, but she's great. She does a lot of social media, all the graphics. She does a lot. She actually put this presentation together for me, right? Like, there she is. So, like, I just send the bullet points. This is what it is, and she loves doing these funny photos of me too. So like silly, ridiculous photos of But
Tell me she does a great job.
yeah, exactly. So maybe the pitfalls of making about me, it's never about me. The inaction. I went to meetups for at least 6 years like this, and I didn't do anything. I literally would go and it was great, but I didn't actually take action. So you can come to this stuff, but unless you take the action, you're like, okay, from this meetup, I'm gonna call this person. I'm gonna go, and networking, in my opinion, it's not just exchanging cards. It's really thinking while you're talking to someone like, well, who is this person? What do they need? Is there anybody I know that I can introduce them to right now? Or is there any book I can recommend for them? Or is there any way we could work together? Like that's networking, right? Because you're really thinking about what they need and you're trying to help them. If you do that, that will build your brand because you'll get to be known as a connector. You get to be known. One of our best connectors we know is, her name is Linda Lim. Do you guys know Linda? Do you know Linda? People know Linda, like she is so good. Oh, you got to meet this person, you got to meet this, so here's this, you got to this event. Like she's so good at connecting people. She does it from her heart and it's very genuine, right? So making a decision, I think that's the biggest thing is just making a decision. You're going to do it, taking action that will get you ahead. This is called imposter syndrome. Almost every successful person I know has this unless they're totally narcissistic, which means like they just aren't aware of what people would think as much. But this is something I had to work through. And how many of you felt like that too? Like, man, who am I to be doing this stuff? Or I'm going to raise money, if I'm going to write a book, I'm going to do like it's a real thing. But the only thing that separates any of us from anybody we're seeing on the screen or we're seeing out there is they just believed that they could do it. And I think, there's that saying at the end of your life, you regret more the things that you didn't do rather than the things that you did. And again, it all starts with a decision. If you can figure out how to get all that stuff to work, but you have to believe it first. And that's where things like affirmations and personal statements and all the stuff that you say to yourself is important. So how you change some of this is you just start saying things about yourself that you want to be true. Pitfalls. This one's not a funny one of me. It's kind of funny. It's this other guy, but I want to call it me too person, like somebody who's like, oh, you've got a self-storage deal. Well, I do too. Or you've got one of these, or I do too. Or you've got a book. Well, I do too. And you're just doing everything that everybody else does versus finding out what's unique about you, right? We've shifted a lot to go, we have 2,000 multifamily units. We're shifting more to alternatives. We're going to oil and gas and car washes and ATMs, and there's things we cash flow. We love that stuff. And so I'm trying to continue to look at what makes us different, what makes us different from other people, right? So these are some of the things to do. So think about for you, what makes you different, and both in your skill set as well as your focus in what you do. It's all really important. Hunting versus farming. We talked about Fast Eddie at the car lot there, right? You want to meet that guy who put his hands together, say, hey, here comes a sale. So hunting is this. Hunting is like, okay, I got a deal to raise. I'm going to go for it. I got to do whatever I can, talk to as many people. I'm going to pound the phones like an animal. Like, that's hunting. And, the challenge is everybody wants to buy, but nobody wants to be sold, right? Nobody wants to be sold. Like, hey, are you, and that's the whole thing. It's not, so farming is you're constantly watering, you're planting, you're pruning. And when it's harvest time, you walk around the tree and you go, if there's a big apple up there, you go take the apple and you give it a little tug. And if the apple comes off easily, okay, I guess it was ripe. If it doesn't come off, you don't yank it off and pull it. You just go on to the next one, right? So it's the attitude of really being a farmer versus being a hunter. And if you continually farm and you plant and you sow and you do all this stuff, you will continually have more and more because you're putting so much out there. Does that make sense? So that's what I find the best people do is they're not hunting, they're farming. It's a very much more high trust, high value way of doing sales, which I think is a noble profession. So I'm going to wrap up here. This is, I think, my second last slide. This is my daughter, Ellie. She's 10 years old. We go on trips, we go camping. She's really important to me, fighting human trafficking, having freedom of time and traveling, and really to be a creator, be somebody who creates something, produces things. Excited when my book comes out for you guys to be able to read it because it's fun just to be able to share it through my experiences and help people go along the path. So this is my ebook. If you want to download it, you can also track some of our stuff here. It's a free download. It's 50 color pages, how to use inflation to your advantage instead of being penalized by inflation. This is a strategy you can use. There's several strategies to actually make inflation your friend. And so that's a free download, a free gift that I have for you guys. But so I think that's all I have. I don't know if we're going into, I think we're going in with Jason. Let's see here for that. Thank you guys. Thanks so much. So far, or back there.
So first of all, let's give a round of applause to Bronson. Bronson, South America. What were like some of your limiting beliefs when you first had to raise capital?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think just the tapes that play, you know, when I'm a kid, they just keep playing like, oh, I can't do this. Well, who am I kidding? I'm not a big guru guy. Like, I don't even know any of this. You know, I just remember when I started, I just felt like a faker. You know, I just didn't know a lot of the stuff. And I think, so I think a lot of it was just kind of belief in myself, both of like, am I worthy of this? A lot of times we think like, oh, it's possible, but like, who am I to do that? And so I think, what really changed that, Tom touched on it, was just the affirmations, you know, being able to like, for me, and this is pretty personal, but I went through a divorce like 6 years ago and I came out of that and I just was like, I just feel no sense of like self-worth. Like, who am I? Like, I just felt really defeated. And so I created some affirmations and one of them was around worthiness, just like I'm worthy of God's love and the love and belonging of others. And I would just say it. I didn't feel it at all. I didn't feel it, but I would look in the mirror and I would say it every morning. And after about a year, like there's 65 days in the morning, like doing this, and I have other ones as well. But like, I really started to feel it and it started to come from within. And I think that's the only way to change it is you have to change. I wish it was like the Matrix where you get the little, like, I know Kung Fu, they put Kung Fu, like, but like, it takes time and it takes practice and it takes effort. Unless we don't realize we have all these things that came from when we were kids that we can change, but it takes effort.
So like, for example, right? Obviously, like, I have a disability. I grew up with cerebral palsy, and like, I remember when I first started, like, cold calling owners, and I started out cold calling investors. I was so scared because I thought, like, man, like, nobody is gonna understand what the heck I'm saying over the phone because I have a speech impediment. And then they go, something I noticed is like, all that is inside my head because after I talked to like hundreds of like apartment owners that the doctor likes, hundreds of potential investors, I realized that people can understand me just well. And for like the one or two who can't understand me, all I had to do is just slow down, articulate, and just repeat myself. It's not that big of a deal. So, did you have something like that happen to you when you were first starting out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I admire, you know, I think calling hundreds of owners, I mean, how you'd be nervous to do that as well. And so I just see like what you did is like being willing to like, you know, I'm gonna climb the mountain, like no matter what it takes. And you did it. So I think for me, there is just the challenge is like making a decision and there's no roadmap to get there, right? There's no there's no plan. I can give people like do this. We were talking about an idea. Oh, you can start with this, whatever. Like there's no, like I couldn't plan the Michael Blanc thing on the cruise and maybe in the martini bar at 3:30 and we had this conversation and like that happened, right? And then that became this, but I think if you are committed to the goal enough, you'll get there. But I think for me, it was just really trying to get clear on what I wanted. And then once you commit to it, but I think, yeah, I mean, the limiting beliefs continue to, they still come up. They still come up. I still get nervous for things. But like, I think I'm able to talk myself through it. Yeah. And a lot of times I think we realize, okay, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm 42 years old. I'm like, you know, I'm like a grown man. Like I'll be okay. You know, like I'll survive. But again, a lot of times we have, I think for all of us, we have these things in our mind that we get stuck in these patterns where we can't break out of. And so we have to change, you know, we have to change the way we think.
Yeah. So like one advantage that you had over me was that before you got into the business, you were in sales, so you already had sales training. And like I grew up in a very conservative, traditional Asian household, and like you are raised like not to be too pushy. That is terrible. When you're in sales, you need to be a little bit pushy, right, you guys? So like, can you talk about like how has sales really helped you in this business, and like especially about like, that story about you being approached at the meetup for your first investor, because something that Greg Cardone always says is that marketing is more powerful than sales.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, because that's really a lot of great points there. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I had all the sales experience, and I started out, I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna get there. I thought maybe I'll find a deal. And I was looking at deals. I analyzed 50 to 100 deals. I was trying to bring them to Michael Blanc. I was bringing them to whoever I could. I didn't even know I was going to fit. And looking back, I'm like, okay, well, maybe sales would be like, because raising money is sales. And I didn't make I was like, oh, maybe not, maybe because I like numbers too. And so I think, it's interesting about that situation because, marketing is very different than sales. Sales is, and I keep looking at Marcus because he's in sales and ad sales. And so there's sales is, you're trying to get people to see things a certain way. Marketing though is let's say your car breaks down or you want to buy something that you've been waiting on, whatever, you may call a friend, whatever, and there'll be a reputation for somebody in town that does that really well, right? And that's a marketing thing, right? Because they've created a brand, they've created a reputation. And so when I was in the front of the room, I didn't necessarily have to sell him because I was in front of 60 people. And I'm leading the conversation with the expert, right? And that was like, oh, wow, like that was pretty cool. And then when he said, now I will say this, because how many of you have sales background? How many of you don't have a sales background? And you're like, I wish I did. Okay. So there's a lot of soft skills that you already have that don't just because you think because you're not in sales doesn't mean, but like the soft skills are like just being emotionally aware. They say EQ is much better than IQ, right? EQ is emotional quotient, being able to read the room, being able to read. So a guy comes up, he says, hey, I'd invest in one of your deals. I could have not picked it. Well, I don't know. Oh yeah. And I could have pitched him right away. Well, I realized like, okay, well, that's interesting. And I said, well, yeah, let's grab some coffee, whatever. So I got his information, right? So I was able to connect with him and I called him the next day, or I followed up with things and we met up. And then I had a sample deal ready. So it was basically a fake deal, right? It wasn't a real deal. It was like a deal I put together just of like, this is what a deal would look like. And I just tried to go, what are you looking for? What cash? I try to listen to him. I'm here, whatever. Said, and I let him share first. Then I showed, well, how does this look to you? He said, oh yeah, well, how interesting would that be to you? So I'd invest 100K in something. Like, okay, great. So he just told me he's ready to invest. He put 100K in. He likes the deal, whatever. And I said, okay, well, there's actually another guy that I'm partnered with. Or I know whatever this guy that has a deal, and I'd love to introduce you guys. Is that okay? And I said, okay, sure. So then I reached out to the other guy. Is this okay if I? And he said, oh yeah, let's do it. So and my goal was to raise more money. But again, those are kind of soft skill things, because a lot of times when something happens, somebody says something and they're like, oh, I wouldn't do that because of this, or they kind of give an objection. They're like, oh, well, that sucks because of this, or I don't like your, let's say you're selling your used car or something, and they're like, I don't like this, I like whatever. Well, all this they're sharing is that they're buying signs. Really, when someone has objections, they're just buying signs. Because what they're doing is they're picturing themselves being in that car, or they're picturing themselves working with you or investing with you. So all these things are going to come. And once you get through all those things, they most likely are going to invest or work with you, or they're going to buy what you have, because again, they're actually visualizing themselves, and you don't realize you do it, but when you go into a situation where something's being sold, you'll think of all the reasons why it doesn't work, right? But those are buying signs, because you're trying to figure out, well, could it work, whatever. And as a salesperson, a good salesperson they're not salesy. They're not fast Eddie. They're asking lots of questions. They're drawing out. Oh, you said you like cash flow. Well, what's worked for you? Well, what happened in the stock market? What's your retirement? What's your financials? Well, how would it work in this? Have you considered passive? You're doing that? And just start like drawing it all. And then by the time you actually go to present something, like, well, you said, if I was selling to BB, I'd say, well, BB, you said, you want cash flow, you want to get rental. Well, this is actually your goals, right? And they say, oh yeah, that's what I want. But what if there was a way to do that where you didn't actually have to do the work and somebody could do it for you, and you can just passively invest and be like, well, that sounds really interesting, right? So again, you've just kind of helped somebody solve a problem they have. You don't lead with your deal like, oh, hey, you look like someone that needs my deal. It's like you've asked all the questions first and you earn that right to be heard. And by the time you share it, they're already like, oh, this person hears me, they listen to me, they understand what I want, they repeated it back. And when they present, it's like, oh, if I have a solution for that, could that help you? Or would you be interested? Like, oh yeah, I would be interested, whatever. And then you've been able to share that. Right. So a lot of us make sales up. It's a super high pressure, whatever. Good salespeople just simply draw out what's there and help provide solutions. And it may not be for what you have, but I think being able to be someone who leads somebody down that path can be really valuable for people.
So, what is your craziest sales story? Like, what's like the craziest raise? What's your biggest raise that you've ever done?
Oh, okay. I think you're talking about the medical sales. Or one time, I could tell one of those too. Yes, or one time getting kicked out of a cancer center in I think I was in San Luis Obispo or something.
Yeah.
When I went up, they told me not to go in, and I went around the back door. I went up the back door, I was talking to the doctor. And then there's this saying in sales that if you don't get kicked out at least once a year, then you're not doing your job. Funny.
We have that same office here. That's crazy.
Exactly. But as far as biggest raise, so when I was working with Michael, we had, they really didn't have anybody focusing on it. It was interesting because they had a list of 40,000 people. They had sold a lot of training. They had really their big product was mentorship. They charged $30,000 a year for mentorship to coach people. They had a $2,000 course. They had these other products they did, but they really didn't have anybody on the seat of raising money. So they were raising $600,000 for a deal. Shortly before I came on, they had to do a second webinar because they couldn't raise the 600K because they just didn't have the infrastructure for it, right? So again, a lot of people could look at that business and say, well, this guy's, whatever. But like, I was thinking, well, how is this? Who's in that seat? I just didn't see anybody in that seat. I was like, I bet they're having trouble there, right? Because some of the sales stuff and just being able to intuit that. But so finally, like after the third deal, we worked together a year and a half. The third deal was a deal in Atlanta. We had an $8 million raise. We raised the entire thing in 24 hours. Wow. We probably could have raised, and it was first come, first serve for those that wired. So literally people were like wiring us money, whatever. And we had to like wire money back, and they were really angry. And like we probably could have raised like $20 million. For that deal. It was crazy. I think it was it was like August of 2020 or something. It was just a really hot time. It was a great deal. But that was probably the craziest deal. I remember my phone. I was on the phone talking with an investor. Like while I'm talking with them, they're trying to figure out the wiring information. I get 2 other calls coming through, and I can't answer them because they're just like all day it was like that, just like call after call after call. It was crazy. So, but Michael's really good at creating funnels and creating interest. So.
Very good story. Hopefully we can get some of that luck as well. Yeah.
Well, I think luck, but I mean, I think it's it's interesting when you see people that are doing big things, there's this event this weekend I'm going to called the Forum, which is the landmark. These guys are involved with it as well, and it's basically the idea that like in your life, if you start getting about big things yourself, you'll draw people that are doing big things, and the people you get around that are doing next level stuff. Yeah. There's a saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Yeah. So if I spend time with people that are raising $1 billion or they're doing it, like it's going to some way elevate me to like learn more, right? So there's luck involved, but it's also, I think, the idea of like, what is it? Luck is where preparation and hard work, or things, whatever that is, the harder you work, the luckier you get, kind of thing. So I look at it, some of it's luck, but it's making the decision, and it's just whatever it takes. It may take you a year to get your first deal, or 6 months. It might take you 2 years. We had a guy at our meetup a few months ago named Ryan Gibson, who him and his partners for a year and a half, they just had the vision. This is what we're doing. This is what they don't have any experience, right? They just only did little small deals. They were in a self-storage company, whatever. And then they took a year and a half, and then they got their first big deal. And that was like 2018. It was like fall of 2018. So less than 5 years later, they've raised almost $400 million. They have close to $1 billion. And like, it's crazy. So you never know. This stuff is hard in the beginning, but if you just stick with it, you will get there. If you work harder and you just keep learning, and if you do more than that, you will get there.
So, what do you think is the best place for you to find high net worth individuals, like potential investors? Because I'm thinking of like going to more charity events. I'm thinking about really more involved in the church. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's different ways to do it. I just heard there's a guy, Bridger Pennington, who did fund launch. He's got this thing he was talking about. You can either work your way in to like a good group like this, which like you go to meetups, you go to things, or you can buy your way in. In some ways, you buy your way in is through a mastermind. He even mentioned the example of like supercar clubs. There's probably a supercar club here of like if you like, they have a Ferrari owners thing of Los Angeles. And to be in the club, you have to own a Ferrari. So you can buy an older, you can own, and now you're in this club with who owns Ferraris, right? Very wealthy people, right? If you have time and space, you want to do that. And they literally did the story where they did it. They bought it was like a supercar club in Utah. They bought this $80,000 Audi and they got in. It was like the cheapest supercar where they got in and they did it. But so there are different ways to do it. I mean, I honestly think if you can create niche content for your avatar. When I say your avatar, is a lot of times we think, oh, I'm just going to raise money from everybody out there anywhere. For me, who we raise from is business owners that have sold a business or people that are trying to figure out how do I start growing passive cash flow. Other people, if your background, I think you're a CPA, is that right? Yeah. So maybe, people that are business owners or maybe other CPAs, you can have a targeted thing. I actually have a friend named Patrick who's spoken at our meetup as well. He created a 1031 guide, which 1031s are how you do a tax exempt exchange. And people do this with millions of dollars, not just with a house to another house. They can take, $2 or $3 or $5 million and exchange that into a syndication. So he created like a publication about this and he started promoting it, whatever. And he's found these really large 1031 investors, right? Because you got to educate, whatever. So like you can find niches that work for you to reach these folks. But I think the amazing thing about being online is it's one to many. So you're not having to have all these calls one off and people just will find you, but also you can really niche down to really the needs and things that you find these people are passionate about. Now you may not know what should I create about, but just if you look at your story and you start having conversations and you start to say, oh, we need something like that. Or you're looking online, or maybe you have a need, like, is anybody doing this? And nobody's doing it. And just making yourself valuable to those people. So you can do it in rooms like this. You can do it. I'm sure, we don't do a net worth poll of who shows up. I'm sure every room has a fair amount of net worth that shows up to meetings like this because, it's just people that have money, have a money challenge. And so, how do I steward this, right? And so, going easy is good too.
Thank you for saying that, Bronson. And now we're gonna have some fun.
Now we're gonna have some fun.
Yes.
I'm gonna start dancing.
Not like what you've been doing.
Who is ready to have some fun right now, you guys? And you guys ready to have some fun?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
You put the dance music on?
No.
Scroll boy.
So we're gonna see you in action, Bronson. Let's do it at the mock call.
We'll do a roll
okay?
play. Okay. Let me get ready for this.
I am a high net worth individual. I'm worth $100 million.
Okay.
I have brought 10 million liquors. I have like a few nightclubs, real estate, other kind of buildings, and I've told you 6 months ago, hey Bronson, next time that you have a deal, I want you to reach out to me because I'll consider investing in your deal. And now you have something that's under contract. It's about it's about 7% cash on cash, 17% ARR. Average annual return. And then nearby 2.0, 1.8 equity multiple. Go.
Okay, guys. We've had an onboarding call.
Yeah.
Okay. And with an investor like this, sometimes I would find a deal right away, just to that's funny. Hey Jason, how's it going? Ring. There's a phone call.
Yeah.
Okay. How's it going?
Who's this?
This is Bronson. Hey, this is Bronson. We talked 6 months ago. I thought we're BFFs now because I hang out at your nightclub every night.
That's good.
Bronson, the bald guy.
Oh yes.
Real estate.
Yes.
There's a lot of Bronsons out there.
Okay.
So how's the nightclub business? Are you getting down there?
It's super busy, Bronson. What is it about, Bronson?
Oh, hey.
What do you want?
Catching the chase. Before we had our call, you had shared with me you were interested in hearing about our upcoming deals. And I had something, we actually have found a very unique deal under contract. It's something that really met the parameters we talked about. And it's in an attractive part of town. You mentioned that you wanted, about a 7% cash on cash. You wanted an equity multiple of, 1.8 to 2, and you wanted these specific parameters. Is it okay if I tell you a little bit about this deal?
Yeah, sure. However, I only have about, 5 minutes before my next appointment.
Okay, well, you said you're interested. Is there any reason why you wouldn't want to join us on a deal that meets your investment parameters?
I want to know more about the team. I want to know who has the most experience in the team, who has the money in the team in case something goes wrong.
Right, okay, those are all great points. So my partner, Mark, has 28 years of experience and 13,000 units.
Okay.
And he's also high net worth. We have several other high net worth folks that typically, net worth of 5 to 10 million. Lots of experience. Really, it's in a known area with a property manager we've worked with before. It's a value add, 70s vintage construction. It's a rinse and repeat that we've done similar types of things. We can send you a few examples that we've done in the last 5 years in this market. But yeah, and the team basically is comprised of a few of us that really, is really lean on Mark with his asset management experience.
How long have you been working with this team, Bronson?
So this will be our 6th deal together. So we worked together for the last couple of years. I knew Mark through another person in multifamily. He's got a great reputation in the industry. I've actually background checked the other partners, including Mark, but those that are actually involved in the operations as well, just because that's kind of a normal process that we do. But yeah, so I have, and really, I think we align on values when it comes to the things that we value in a deal and the things that I shared with you and the things that they value.
How much is the minimum?
Minimum is $5 million. Minimum is 100K.
I just don't have 100K right now.
You don't have 100K right now.
No.
Last we talked, I think you said you had 10 million liquid. So something's changed in your financial situation.
I'm just scared of what's going on in the economy right now. I just gotta keep a little bit for reserves.
Yeah, okay. And so would 0.1% of your net worth be appropriate to invest in something like this? And so
I don't know.
9.9%.
I just gotta have it for emergency,
Yeah,
we're gonna go into a recession in the next couple months. So.
Yeah, the recession they keep saying is 3 to 6 months away at all times for the last several years. So now one thing I will say about this deal is we feel it's very recession resistant because of the growth, the population growth that's happening in this market. We see rent upside. The rent is currently $1,000. We see rent is between $1,400 and $1,500 after a post renovation, a $6,000 renovation. So we feel like that puts a big margin of safety, so that even if we're in a recession, even if rates continue to rise, we still have that margin of safety where we're protecting the valuation of the property as we renovate it.
Okay, well, you guys seem like you guys are pretty good team. I've done a little bit of research on you guys. However, since this is our first deal together, I would feel more comfortable if I invested $50,000 just to try you guys out.
Try us out.
Yeah.
No, I get that. I understand that. And I think we do get that sometimes. I think for us, we really try to have, our goal really for this, Jason, is that in 5 years, you'd say, man, I love working with those guys. They've been just, great on the performance and the communication. And unfortunately, we really have a limited number of investors we can serve, because if we, that's a challenge. You got to back me in a corner here. I was like, I'd probably say, okay, we could do 50K, but next one, you got to put 200K in. So, okay, Jason, we do 50K for you on this one, but would you keep us in mind for the next one? A couple of months, we'll do, see the communication and how we do.
Maybe we'll see.
Maybe, okay. I appreciate all the buying signs and the objections that you gave me, and hope the nightclub business. If you invest, though, I got to get a free pass to all your nightclubs.
Who has some questions for Bronson?
Who wants to come here and do a role play with Jason?
Michael.
Yeah, so I was wondering, sometimes when you start networking with people, you start to go in kind of fresh. I know when I started networking with people, I was fresh. I didn't really understand certain nuances and, just talking with people in general, maybe even some emotional intelligence. So what would you say to somebody who kind of may have rubbed people off the wrong way just because of their own ignorance of not knowing how to interact with people, being too salesy maybe, and then trying to like reintroduce themselves and like try to kind of rebrand themselves and gain the trust of somebody who they might have rubbed the wrong way?
I love the question, man. Yeah, that's a great question because either you're on the shy side, which I honestly, I was very shy growing up. I've become very gregarious, like a little gregarious as I get older, but I was very shy. And then what he's talking about is more, what if you've been a little too, like in the China shop, you've been a little too aggressive on this, like how do you kind of temper that? How do you regain some of that? Well, I think a couple of things. I think one is, I also think it's better. A lot of us, I think, kind of start on the side where we're a little more timid. I'm gonna feel a little more on the timid side. Like a little more like, hey, going, this feels uncomfortable. I think if you have been a little more bold, I think it's a little easier to go from there and kind of tone it down. And not that you can't, because again, I started from this side, I was able to work it up. But there's kind of this healthy balance, right? Where you're really trying to find a way of like, how do I come across? And one way to actually become more aware of things is to have somebody else watch you in a situation who you respect and know has a fair amount of EQ and just say like, hey, what do you think of my conversation with this person? What do you think? Do you think this is kind of what I took away. What did you think about how that went? Whatever. And they'll give you a very different perspective, right? And it's very good male and female too. And a lot of times if you're a guy, having a female do that for you is really helpful. All the ladies said, yes, that's right? Because a lot of guys like sometimes women will do things guys have no idea about. But like, I would say, on that side, it's just, if you've been a little too much, then maybe approach it a different way. Maybe ask a lot more questions than you present anything. And again, that's very disarming for people. So if you just say, hey, tell me about that. If you're just curious, you're genuinely curious, but in your mind, you're steering the conversation about really trying to uncover a need. Because people start, oh, hey, how's it going, Mike? We do a role play. How's it going? Whatever. And if we had more time, I might say like, well, let's get down to the bottom of what is that fear about losing everything? What's you have, 10 million or $100 million, like what really, learning more about the story and really what drives that person. Because if you can uncover what the hard thing is for that person, then you've got the goal. They may not even know it. They may be driven on something and until you ask the questions to get down, like, well, I really want security. Well, why is that important? Well, it's because, my parents, we were homeless for a while when I was a kid, whatever. Well, that really means a lot. You kind of like, what was that like for you as a kid when you're kind of opening that up? And then you say, well, it sounds like you don't ever want your kids to go through that, whatever. And you may even see some emotion in the person, right? Because you've touched the heart now. And then you say, okay, well, what would that look like if you weren't able to? So again, you're not really even selling anything yet. You're just uncovering what they need and where they're at. And if you can just do that for people and help them to uncover, because people will run around with, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this, but they don't know what's driving that is some real core need of something that happened a long time ago. And if you can just uncover in a way that's high trust, that's a very tender place, right? So I would just focus on that. And then once people, because then that's a very trusting thing you gain with somebody. And if you can do that, then you can softly say, well, hey, I thought about it. And, and maybe it's something you have, maybe something you don't, maybe it's, hey, there's stuff over here. And sometimes I'll present it in that situation. I might even present our deal. I'll say, hey, well, have you thought about passive income? Or is that about, getting involved in these things that can reduce your taxes? And we do them, but there's other people that do them too. And I can refer, but having a conversation around this, right? You see how that's very different than like pitching anything. I'm just kind of saying like, well, hey, you've got this thing, maybe we can solve this. That's a great question though.
The question on that. There's one more question online at least.
Okay.
Dexter, do you want to say, do you have a question?
Hey, everyone.
Mr. Dallas.
All right. Yeah, Dallas. I want to give a special thank you to Jace for holding down in my absence. Also, Bronson, thank you for being our guest speaker. You dropped a lot of great bombs. I was over here taking notes down in Dallas. A few things that you touched on, I do kind of have that, I do have that limited belief of the imposter syndrome. Like, I can't do this. Why do I deserve this? But like I said, I keep pushing forward and giving myself those positive affirmation statements and continue growing and showing up as a leader in a space and not an expert. But once again, thank you, Bronson, for sharing everything and everyone for coming out. Jason, you're doing a good job, brother.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Appreciate it, man.
All right, no problem. Thank you.
Maybe you can speak to some of the just different asset classes that you're kind of currently working in comparison to the multifamily.
Yeah, absolutely. So my book's coming out soon. It's called Fire Yourself: How to Replace Your Income with Passive Income within 3 years or less. And the idea is like multifamily is the gateway drug, right? It's like once you try it, you get addicted, whatever. But a lot of people start with multifamily because it's understandable. It's real estate. It's the loans. Everything's pretty like understandable, right? And then once you kind of understand that, you can bring it really to other asset classes. So there's really 3 areas of any deal I look at, no matter what the asset class. We looked at all kinds of things, invested in lots of different asset classes, but the market. So what is the market? For example, like in ATM machines, what's the ATM machine market look like? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Who uses ATM? What's that market? If you're in a market that stability has growth, what are the factors there that are good? If you're in the right market, if the deal's not an amazing deal, you're going to do great because the market is favorable. Right? We're in Jacksonville, Florida. It's grown 2% in the last 2 years, which is a lot of population growth. And so we know, even if we just, we know rents are going to be fine because we're in a great market, right? Then you have who's the operating team, who's the people that have done this, have they done deals in that sphere before? And then the last thing is, what is the deal specifically? Like, do I understand what are the 1 or 2 primary risks of how I could lose money? Because there's always 1 or 2 primary risks. And if you don't understand it, you need to read more and do more research. But usually 1 or 2 primary risks of how you could lose money. So it's important that you understand really what those are before you invest. But so we're doing ATM machines. We've raised about 12 million for that the last 18 months. That's probably been the most predictable cash flow investment that we've had or we've seen. It pays, around 100K invested, pays about 2,100 a month every month, starting month 4, and it pays out for 7 years. It's a preferred return. It's not a guaranteed payment, but it's a preferred return. So you get about half your money back in 2 years, and about 4 years, all your money's back. The last years are cash flow. It's 100% depreciation, 80% in year 1. So there's some things about that that are amazing. So, and you never recapture the depreciation either. So again, real estate, when you sell, you get depreciation, you've got to recapture the years you didn't use. You don't ever recapture this because it's equipment, right? So there's some benefits of that. The oil and gas, there's oil and gas kind of cash flow stuff. We've done a little bit passively with that. We've had one that's more of a venture deal in the oil and gas space with a 40-year oil engineer. It's potential like 17x to 100x type of stuff. So it's a much higher potential return. It's the first deal we've done like that with our investors, but it's also like, hey, this is money. You could lose all of this, right? This is something that there could be a pretty good chance you lose it all, right? So it's just got to make sure you frame that up for investors. We've done a car wash deal that'll probably reopen that soon. I was talking with somebody about that, about the private equity roll up. I don't know who I was talking to about that. We were talking about that. But if you have a gas station, a car wash, a restaurant, a dental practice, something, even my friends that sold their business, they sold it to a private equity group. And so typically those sells, a lot of them is for 8 to 10 times earnings. So whatever the earnings is for 1 year, it will sell for 8 to 10 times that. But if you have 50 of the same type, whether it's car washes or dental or whatever, you can sell for 20 to 30 times earnings, right? So you get a 2 to 3 times multiple just for having more. It's kind of amazing. So there's a lot of the one strategy is called the private equity roll up, where you just go try to like raise money to go acquire and build and put things together. So our car wash strategy is we've got 10 or 15 now with a group that's it's a franchise, but it's a really well-run franchise, one of the most profitable and nice revenue franchises. When we get to 50, we're already seeing offers at 20 multiple now, even though we haven't built everything. But once we get up there, it'll be a return for investors. So we look at different aspects for different investors for different reasons. I like self-storage. We haven't done that. We've done it passively, but not for our investors. But I'm always looking at different things that are unique. And, a lot of times we dismiss stuff because we don't know, we don't understand it. But a lot of times it's worth taking a second look on all this stuff.
And the shameless plug, when is your book coming up?
Yeah, it's within the next 30 to 60 days.
Okay.
So probably by the end of July. So we've already done the first full edit and reviewed it. I've got one more edit and then just got to get some endorsements and then I'm planning to present a couple.
Let me know when it comes out. I'll personally buy a copy myself.
Yeah, I'll get you a copy, Jason.
Anybody else have more questions? Wakefield?
Hey, Bronson, thanks for sharing. I mean, incredible value and, from your experience and obviously very successful story here. For your avatar, where did you start out and how did you eventually narrow down your avatar? How do you communicate to that avatar?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think this is important for everybody because a lot of times I kind of go back to the avatar question of like, not Avatar the movie, like was a great movie, people and everything, but avatar of like, who is the person you're trying to reach, right? And so for me initially, And this is, I think, before you do anything, if you can try to just narrow down, and you'll think like, I'm too niched, what in the world? But the trouble is, if you speak to one person that you can picture them in their mind and they have a name and they have specific things they go through. So my first guy that I started with, his name was Bart. And he was literally a guy I worked with in medical sales. And he was late 50s, 2 teenage daughters. You know, he had a great job. He's making probably 200 to 300K a year, but he couldn't leave his job because he didn't have any passive sources. But he was so checked, he's kind of checked out. But I could tell that he wasn't really like excited to be there. But he didn't know how to. So I was like, I had to go into a guy like Bart and teaching him how to develop passive income, because he probably had a net worth of a couple million, and he was trying to figure out how to pay for his girls to go to a great school, and he was trying to figure out passive income and kind of be able to retire before he was ready with a pension or his retirement. So I think, and then when you go from there is once you got that figured out, what are the biggest challenges he's trying to solve? Well, he's trying to solve something for his kids. Well, what's it in his marriage? What's it in his friendships? What's it in his place of life? What are the type of places that he hangs out? Like, where did he go and research this? What kind of groups would he be a part of? Well, I know he's a bicyclist, whatever. So just thinking through all these different things of like, where are these people? If you search, I think there's I don't have any necessarily good resources for this, but if you search like find my avatar or just, develop my avatar, that's a really, really good thing. And then I would when I would do anything in the beginning, I'd always ask, well, is this something that would serve Bart? And if Bart wouldn't be interested in it, then I wouldn't do it, right? And that's a way to really, really be helpful, because it really niches you down to be like, this is the person I want to reach. Now it shifted a little more to business owners, because that was my background. This guy was medical device sales. I realized like there's a lot of people in the business world that have sold a business, that have tax issues or whatever, and they have a lot of money. So that's who I've wanted to focus on. And I feel like I can speak to that based on some of my experience and now being a business owner. So I think hopefully that helps a little bit with the avatar.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you invest in California?
We'll come back in one sec. I don't invest in California. I would. I haven't. Well, there's a couple of reasons. We have our 2,000 units. About 1,500 of them are in Jacksonville, Florida. We've got a few hundred in Atlanta and less than a few hundred in Huntsville, Alabama. We like to buy in areas where we see population growth, job growth, and income growth. Yeah. California's had a population loss. They've probably had stable or loss of income. Like, it's not favorable there. Secondly, we like business and landlord friendly. California is not business or landlord friendly. Like, I had a friend who, you've heard the story. He had a horse story. His tenants didn't pay. They forged documents. They gave him a background check, but he didn't actually do the background check on them. And so they showed up with documents and pay stubs, whatever. Well, it was all fraudulent. And they made one payment and they didn't pay for 6 months. So he took 6 months to get him out of there. And then they ended up suing him for an injury that I don't know if it'll go through, but stuff like that. Versus I think in Alabama, if somebody has not paid and has the intent not to pay, you can get them out, I think, in 3 days, which I think is like, I don't know how I feel about that. It's like so soon, but at least as a landlord, you want to work with people that you have the ability to do with things what you want. There's no rent control. There's things that you can do to actually do what you want with your property. So I would be open. We're just having a conversation about fourplexes, and I get a 0% down, and somebody basically gives me a discounted rate on a fourplex. Like, I'll pick up a fourplex. That sounds great, but I'm not going to raise money typically for stuff here for all those reasons usually.
Yeah, just had a question regarding farming that you had on your one of your slides. Can you just elaborate just a little bit more on how you're doing it, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. So farming. So to me, farming it's putting content out there. It's putting resources out. It's having, and I would say even what Michael was sharing too, it's going up and even having those questions that draw out people and really be able to understand what their unspoken needs are. Farming though is awesome because in the sense of going one to many is that you're putting things out there. You don't know who's going to respond to it. When people respond, you're able to take that and shift it. Okay, well, this one, I had one YouTube video that was like how to become accredited when you don't have the net worth of the income, right? There's a way you can do it. I had a video and it just got like all this traction, whatever. And so I was like, oh, well, that's a really interesting topic. People are interested, right? So I should do more around that, right? Or if I have anything to do with Ken McElroy, it's like I get a ton of views on it. People are really interested because he's Ken McElroy, right? So like do some more stuff with Ken, right? So it's just like, I think finding things that people can get value from. And it's the funniest thing. This is an example of this. When I met Michael Blanc for the first time in person, it was fall of 2018 at an event. This was before the cruise we went on, so 6 months before. And I went up and said hello to him. And I was like, I'm a very shy, non-gregarious person now, but I was, Michael, I was like, oh my gosh, Michael. I was like so excited to see him. And I think he was just like kind of taken back. I was like, oh, I was all excited. But I realized like he didn't know me at all. He never met me, never like whatever. But I'd spent hours with the guy on a podcast and on his videos. I'd spent probably 20, 30 hours, 50 hours. I spent so much time with that guy, listening to all his stuff, whatever. And I got so much value from him. So it's interesting how that can happen, right? So that's why I think of the farming. So again, with him, he had a lot of trust. I had a lot of trust for him, both because my cousin had recommended him and he's a multifamily career guy, whatever, as well as just listening, getting so much value from his stuff that like he was farming and he didn't even know, you don't know who it's going to reach, right? So then I showed up and he said, hey, what do you like? I was ready to work with, I was ready to do, I was there, right? So with investors, that's kind of what we're doing, the same thing. If you're doing it through media, you're basically giving people an opportunity to get value and see you, whether you're in the front of the room or it's just a podcast or something that you're figuratively the front of the room, people will find you and see you in that light. And so that's what I think of as farming. Now it doesn't have to be over media. It can be other ways. It can be, you just call your network and you have great conversations, you whatever. But I think the magic of a lot of this is by doing one-to-many, it's so much more efficient with your time. I could have a conversation with each one of you for 30 minutes. We could really, it would be great. Or we could do a thing like this and everybody's in the room, everybody gets something out of it and you guys can talk about like, it's different, right? And so that's the thing about farming is it's very scalable. And there's the Fast Eddie, don't be Fast Eddie. I love that picture though. He's just so ready to go.
Yes, I got a question. So this kind of goes back to the whole farming thing. I'm working on like building my credibility pieces, like I like to call it. I pretty much just copied it from this book I've been reading, The Best Ever Farmer Syndication.
Yeah.
I don't know if you read it as well.
Great book, yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice book. I'm loving it so far. But I've pretty much gotten into right now working on like video content. So I've just been trying to keep it simple, just pull out my phone and just talk about some deals that I've locked up, how I got into the space, how I found my mentor who's kind of showed me around like how to get into locking up off-market deals. But I was just wondering, is that like the most important thing to focus on? Like just kind of filming a video on your phone, just kind of making it easy, just getting some content out there, making maybe a slideshow like you did here, and then maybe creating a website. Like I'm not really sure what's the most important.
Yeah, and the challenge is too is like where what would you say you do around here, right? Like where do you start? Like what's step 1, 2, 3? Well, the first thing, a couple of first things I would do, and Michael Block actually told me this one is, it is helpful to have a website and have a lead magnet on your website. What a lead magnet is when people go to your website, something pops up. Now that how to use inflation to your advantage, I've had hundreds or maybe 1,000 people download that, right? And those are all people that as they download it, they get into my network, they grow on my list. I don't say I never say join my newsletter. I never say I just say download this, whatever, and people download it. And if you look at anybody's site you go to, even businesses you go to, there's always a pop-up, right? Save 20% off your next word, filter your email, you're giving a trade, there's a trade that happens. So if you can do that first, then when you do a video, then when you go on a podcast, you can always be driving people to that. There's always a call to action. Almost every social media post now we do is download my free ebook, join my investor club, right? It's one of two things. And so it's to get people to come into the system. So I would say, all of it's good. And I think you can do is just start letting friends and family know what you're doing. And videos, one way to do that, you can do a weekly or monthly email. That's really helpful. But I also feel like this can be how many of you are a little overwhelmed just thinking about like, it's like a lot of work doing all this, right? And I get that, totally, it's a lot of work, but it doesn't have to be all at once, right? So you don't have to, I didn't have a podcast for almost a year of just me doing this. I just said, okay, I'm going to try this webinar. I'm going to try to get this going. I have my lead magnet, my website. And when they did the lead magnet, they had a thing, and it took me a couple, 2-3 months to figure out how to do all that, right? It took me a long time. Once I got that, I was like, okay, I got it. And I was able to teach that to somebody else, and they did that. Then we started doing the weekly emails, and then I started doing the webinar. And the webinar became a thing I can pull people in, and then they promoted as well. And that became, okay, we really got that down, okay, whatever. Then I added the podcast, right? And then I get people, and I'm even tweaking that and growing. So you have to figure out what it is you want to do and you want to try. And you may try something that's like, this didn't work or it didn't work this way. So figure out what kind of engagement you're getting from it. Are you getting a lot of comments from it? Are you getting whatever, people reaching out? And sometimes you just do it. And eventually people do show up. But maybe there's a live thing you could do where you get people on there and or maybe you bring somebody on who's well known and you can have a conversation with them about this and then people get in there, So it's a great question.
So
though.
far, yeah, so far I've just recorded 3 videos and just haven't posted them.
Yeah.
I just have to sit on my phone. I'm just kind of like, procrastinating, posting it all and getting started.
Yeah, well, and when you post it, you can I talk about repurposing content. You can record a video and then you can post it multiple places. You can have it transcribed. You can do a blog. You can do other posts, on different social media that leads to things. All that can be automated too. Or if you have a VA, they can do some of that stuff for you too. But I think it's great. And this is the challenge, right? When you start, well, what am I going to do? What's this going to look like? Keep the end in mind. This is a Tony Robbins thing too. Or keep your goal in mind and continually change your approach. So if it doesn't work, change it, tweak it, just keep doing it. And just keep focusing on that. But whatever's going to get me there, and okay, this got me a little closer. Okay, this set me back. Okay, and you just kind of keep going towards it, and you'll get there. So you're on the right track. It's just then post the first video, send it out, put yourself out there, and then. But that's a moment too where it's like, I'm actually putting myself out there, and it's my job. And that's a thing too. And there's ways you can block people on LinkedIn. Just a free tip here. You can block people on LinkedIn and they don't know that you block them. They just can't search you. So if you block people that you work with, this has been helpful for me, even though it worked out fine because I was ready to leave anyway. But you can block them. They don't know you block them. And you can just block people specifically on LinkedIn. And Bessie's like, I just said something.
Well,
like,
they can see if you're friends with someone else, they can see
if
you.
you're connected, but they can't even search you. You block them. You show you're invisible to them.
So if they search you, there's no result. There's no.
Correct. Yeah. Do a little research on that, but I did it. I was like, oh man, I wish I'd done this before, but I was ready to leave my job. So then I started scaling up stuff, but I was in a sales role where like perception's reality. So then a boss's boss saw some of my stuff because I didn't block them.
Yeah,
And then it became like, and so when I left, it was like, I think, it was just time because they were like, it was a beautiful destruction. It was wonderful.
It's funny you say I've thought about having to like, how do I block like my likes? Because I always like just like real estate stuff and like my coworkers or boss or whatever. They're just like,
you can block everybody, these are all tasks for a VA too. I go on and it's a little manual to do it. But just have your VA go on and go and do this task, and you just create things that need to be done and just make your list longer and go do that for you. Yeah. Well, your mind was just like, I just. Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I. So I was thinking more in terms of like, I always want to make an impact kind of on a bigger scale on people's mindsets, because I think everything starts with this mindset that, you can do this thing or real estate or whatever. So I was thinking of, doing the social media thing to maybe with like with the affirmations, right? And so I don't know how that will relate to real estate. I'm sure that, that's like more like a bigger picture stuff than, niching down to something in real estate, so I don't know how that, could you speak about that? Or?
Yeah, so I guess the question, if I could clarify, you can tell me if it's right. Are we okay in time? Or sure. So yeah, the question is more about affirmations around wealth or real estate, or is there a way to create affirmations around that? I would say yes, there is. Some of my affirmation, I have one affirmation that's about income and net worth, and I say that. And I think something, again, it's more like you're saying in the present tense. You're saying like this is happening this year, or this is happening right now, or I'm this person by this date, this is happening in my life. And so a lot of times you say those things and eventually your subconscious will figure out a way to make it happen. So you can do it around different things. There's some training around. I actually have a couple of videos on my YouTube channel about affirmations and about wealth affirmations and different things. And so I share a little bit about that there. But there are other things you can find too. Zig Ziglar had something years ago that was like a sheet you download and read. And so if you just read some printed affirmations around wealth or other things, you can like adapt your own.
Yeah, I've been doing affirmations recently. So it's I've been through a lot of growth, personal growth from just, speaking these affirmations. So I guess I want to, as far as like social, like you said, having a platform to help people, like I was thinking more about starting a channel or website, some kind of website around affirmations.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how that would work. I know it's not business or real estate related, but you know,
Well, something you enjoy, you could always do wealth affirmations and you know, have a call to action that here's my, download my free guide to
I
wealth
know.
affirmation. And then, you know, from there you could have, oh, this is our business, what we do. So that there's an idea there too. You don't have to, you can blend things too. Or
I don't
something.
know how you could go from the affirmation stuff to a specific niche in real estate. Like, is that something that is not a,
Well, you can make it,
path
you
that-
can make it part of something else. You can make it a resource. So real quick, I'll say this, there's a woman named Savannah Arroyo who does the Net Worth Nurse. She's a friend of mine. She was in LA and she was a nurse manager at Providence St. Joseph here in Burbank. And she's probably early 30s. She quit her job and was able to and she educates a lot of nurses and medical professionals around different things that they do. So there's like a topic around that too, the net worth nurse, how to get you. She's got all this great branding around it. I mean, that could be a great resource too, that just goes along with what you do. But maybe we can talk offline about that too, some other ideas. It's good.
I have one more quick question, just adding to Casey's. So, and you had these slides on if I were to do it again type of thing. So what is your biggest lead magnet right now? Is it people go to your website? Is it people you meet at conferences? Podcasts we hear is really good because it's like, you know, like Hunter and Thompson says, speaking one to many, and then people get to know you that way, like how you got to know Michael Blanc. And by the way, Bronson has an amazing podcast, but if people don't know about it, get a lot of value out of that too. So.
Yeah, so the biggest, and that really is the question. That's a great question you're asking, that is how do I, because at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. It's really like the more leads you get, you know, I've had 1,500 one-on-one phone calls with investors. The percentage of those that invest is about 17%, right? The average investment is, you know, depending on what your minimum is, was between 72,000 and 120,000, depending on when we did it and what our minimums were. But I think the biggest return for us personally has been webinars, because I'll go to 3 big influencers and I'll tell them, I'll say, hey, here's the link. I say, if you promote this, if you send out an email to your list, if you promote on social media, whatever, and you do this, you know, I will share the list. I will share the registration list with you. So, and they'll do it. It's funny that some people do it, some don't, but like when they do it, it's like, I had one guy, one of the pictures, George Gammon, he sent it out to his list of 20,000 people. We went from like 100 people signed up to like 900, like just like immediately. It was like, wow, that was amazing, right? And so that's huge. But again, why would someone, and this is something I had to get around, like, why would someone like that come to my event or your event, right? Well, it's because there's enough credibility there that it's going to be an event that I'm not going to pitch my own stuff there, right? It's really just education. Once in a while I'll do some at the end, oh, here's a deal, here's what, but like, it's mostly just, we're going to create a stage here. We're going to create almost like a meetup. We're going to create a space, like Jason's created this space, Jason Dexter's created this, that this is a place where, you know, value is going to happen. People are going to come and they're going to share, right? And so if you can create that for other experts, and all I have to do is show up or give it to their team and, hey, promote this, and I'm going to show, like, then that's a win, right? And they will come because they want to be on stages. They want to be presented to other people. Why would they want to do that? Because they want to meet other investors. They want to be presented this way. They want the video. They want all this stuff, right? And that's the whole track, the one to many, right? That's what they're doing. And if you're going to do the work, hey, that's great. That sounds good. Maybe a network that Marcus has or somebody else has that they don't have. And so people will do that. But that's been the number one.
I imagine. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
man. Yeah.
Great.
I'll be around for a while too, so if we're chatting, stay around chatting.
So something that we talked about a lot today was the power of affirmations, and I can tell you guys that affirmations, having that positive talk with yourself is so powerful. Reminding yourself of your goals every single day is so powerful. So, for example, like me, like I grew up with that cerebral palsy, and like I remember being a kid and like my mom would take it to like the mall. And then like I would see other people who have disabilities doing minimum wage jobs. Like for example, they are wiping the tables at the mall, and they go, there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I always knew that like I wanted something bigger for myself. And something that really helped me was writing my goals down every single morning, and right before I go to sleep, I wrote down I have 10,000 rental units. I am 175 pounds, 10% body fat, whatever. People know my story. And like I would do that for like years, and then I started to realize like, wow, I closed on 3 single-family homes, and now I'm closing on a 106 apartment building.
Wow.
And then wow, like I've been on several podcasts, and they people actually are interested in my story. That's crazy. So they go, one of the books that really helped me get to this book, which is the 10X rule, the 10X rule by Grant Cardone. And I would highly recommend you guys read this book. And out of curiosity, who here has a big vision for themselves, but it seems so far away? Who here? What is your vision for yourself, and why do you think that it's so?
Well,
far away?
I just got started. So for me, that getting that, you mentioned getting just that first deal, and I think for me, it's getting that first deal because I haven't gotten that. I've made offers, it hasn't panned out, but just keep trying and to get that. That's why it seems far away. That's why to me it seems far away. But the goal is to retire and spend more time with my kids and quit my job. Yes, quit my job. And sooner rather than later. But yeah, it's because I feel like I just started, and this is just like, getting up every day and like just trying to focus on that target and getting over that, like pushing through that threshold. My first one was cold calling, which I did, and I was like, oh, okay, there I did my first one, it's over. But just those steps.
Have you read this book?
I have not.
I challenge you to read this book, and then next month you're going to give us a book report. That's a big limiting belief here. What is your limiting belief and why?
I think growing up, first generation American, parents moved there from Taiwan. They were like in the military a lot, and I spent the last 8 years in ministry. So I was actually like a young adult pastor for 4 years, and I think I was like really deep into it. So I was like, don't worship God or money and all that stuff. I'm meeting all these cool like business people as I was church planting and doing all that stuff, San Francisco and then Reading. And then I just moved down here like a year ago and doing full-time freelance photography, just trying to make a living. And just met some people in real estate like a month or two or a couple months ago. And I was taking photos for a conference called Avengers Mindset or Avengers Mastermind. And then so I met a bunch of people that were in real estate. I'm like, what is this world? And so now I feel like I'm just starting into it, and met a developer. So I'm working with him now, just raising money for him. And for me, personally, I just want to, like, I don't really care about money. Like, I just want to make a living just so I can raise a family in the future, you know, and so I can live well and I can help my parents to understand that mindset because they're like old, they're like 56 like and 60 now, and dad's still working as a professor. He gambled like $500,000 away. So like, it's just like been pretty hard, I guess. And it's hard to get into that mindset because most of the people that I'm surrounded with now are just gig workers. And so they don't really understand the mindset of like value and getting whatever. And so I just started looking at networks and trying to figure out how to get there. And so, yeah, I'm just starting, and it's, yeah, I don't know. It's a big task, you know, like it's a big dream to want to have passive income and all that stuff for me, at least, because I've never had anyone around me that do that.
So here's my question to you is, in your head, how much money do you have to make per year for you to support both your parents and your future family?
Oh gosh, I don't know, to support my parents for the rest of their lives and family. I want 4 kids. I don't know, like that's just a number. I don't know yet. You know, I haven't had my first ones. People are like, you have your first one, you don't want anymore. But probably, I don't know, at least 200K a year just to be able to send money to parents and family back home in Taiwan, and you know, so like.
So I challenge you to for you to write down your goals. First thing when you wake up, and before you go to sleep, I want you to write. I am making $200,000 now. As a tax, I'm taking care of my parents. I have 4 beautiful kids. I'm supporting them and I'm providing them with a great life. I want you to write that every single day. When you wake up and they're ready before you go to sleep. All right. Rather than crazy limiting belief. I know that you have a limiting belief. We were just having a conversation over there. Would you like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I want to I want to wholesale, and I haven't done it yet, and I'm still studying, and I want to get a sale in real estate. So,
what would you say is holding you back?
That's a good question. Scared.
Why are you scared?
I don't know. Scared because I feel alone. That's about it.
And why do you feel alone?
Because I recently lost my job. I lost my job 2 years ago, and I don't. That's it. I don't know.
So what do you think? What do you think? Is holding you back the most from you living the life that you want to live?
I'm not making money because I have to make money in order to live a life.
How much money you will make?
Right now is 0 because
no, how much money do you want to make?
Don't want to make? Simple 75,000, just simple.
Come on, Logan. You're not working this hard just to make 75,000.
No, yeah. You just giving me, I wanted to give you a figure, so it's a figure of 75,000. That's a figure. It was a figure that I gave. It's a figure that I gave because I wanted.
Fine, like, so like, that's why I want you to write every single morning. I want you to write, I am the best wholesaler in the whole nation. I'm closing one deal per what? Per week, per
day.
month,
Per day.
Okay. Okay, one last one. Who wants to go last? Yes, can you see?
I don't know if it's a limiting belief, but I really want to make the American dream happen. Like I'm a U.S. immigrant, just got my green card 4 months ago. So I'm just here to make it happen, show that the U.S. American dream is still alive today.
Yes.
Let me tell you guys something. I am so mad at that guy right there. Casey, because one of my goals that I write down every single day is I live in Colombia. That's the thing I want to do. And then they go, this guy came from Colombia to America to make the American dream come true, and for him to actually challenge himself. So I'm proud of you, and I challenge you to actually write down your goals as well every single day. So. All right, then you guys, so I just want to say thank you again for you guys showing support. Before we leave, can we please take a group picture together?
Yes.
Come on. Yes.
You too, Max.
You want taking a picture of us?
Yeah, where's your phone? Or you want to use mine?
Of course.
Hey, I had it on.
Yeah, I'll grab a tape.
Anyway, coming, John.
It's like there's things like this, like you said. It was pretty nice down there.
I don't know. Well, we're gonna be looking here. I don't want to look down here because somebody come over.
Cheese.
Oh, your face is in both.
Cheese.
The chicken.
Another type of cheese. Everybody choose cheese. Cheese. Swiss cheese is terrible. Well, there you go, Bronson. See, Bronson gets it. He knows what I'm doing. Steve too.
2, 3.
Cool, I think.
I gotta, let me get one too.
I
gotta get Steve's.
Anybody else?
There you go.
Great. This one's great.
Wow, the room is
Hold on, I'm
big.
gonna take out one too. I'm gonna get one too. Everybody. Everybody's coming.
To this one.
Let
me get it. Throw your hands up. We'll count 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's go.
Where at? Where is that? I'll be there.
You made it, man. You made it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, was that